All right, still sitting outside, which seems to be the only place I can find some quiet anymore. I'm sure you guys are experiencing the same thing. It's getting harder and harder to find spaces where I can record quietly. Let's talk about the creature and the creature's experience in this portion of Frankenstein. Notice that they meet up right after Victor says in chapter 10, "Wandering spirits, if indeed ye wander and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion away from the joys of life." Immediately he sees the creature, almost as if prayers are answered. There's the creature who then maybe takes away his joys of life. I want you to pay attention to the very first words that the Creator speaks to the created. "Devil," I exclaimed, "do you dare approach me?" Imagine these being the first words that you've heard from your parent, calling you a devil and asking if you dare to approach me. That element of rejection. And I think that rejection permeates the creature's experience. He's rejected everywhere. So one of the things I think too that's important in this section is to just kind of stop and recognize, how does the creature compare to what we thought the creature was going to be like? He's really well spoken. He speaks beautifully, and in a lot of ways more beautifully than Victor does. He's kind. He thinks about other people more than Victor does. There's an element of gentleness and softness about the creature that we don't see in Victor, where he's compassionate. Now, he's also very violent. Of course, we find out by the end, he does a few really violent actions. The burning down of the house, and of course, as we find out at the end of this section, the murder of William. Very, very violent actions. But there is a beauty in his words and in his experience. Does he have a point about all of what he's experienced? Does he deserve to have a companion? Imagine this life of rejection where everybody rejects you based on your experience. I mean, he frightened himself. The uncouth and inarticulate sounds which broke from me frightened me into silence again. He's scared of himself. And I don't know. He finds fire. He figures out how to make fire, how to control fire. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? And of course, then we come into the subtitle for the story, The Modern Prometheus. And this ability of the creature to control fire mimics or reflects, I guess, maybe Victor's ability to control or create life, which both of those work with that modern Prometheus. He has kind of this scientific mind. He tries different things. He roasts the berries he finds, and he finds what tastes better and what makes him feel sick. The first human he sees perceiving me, shrieked loudly, and quitting the hut, ran across the fields with a speed of which his debilitated form hardly appeared capable. So the very first time he encounters human beings, he is horribly rejected. He goes into the town, he's attacked, everybody's afraid of him. And so when he comes across this family, he hides and observes the people in the cottage. So these cottagers, of course, teach him a lot about life, about love, about language. This is how he learns to read, how he learns to speak. And we get the story of Safie. It's really interesting. I love the narrative structure of this portion, because the story of Safie, as she comes to Felix, Safie tells her story to Felix. The creature observes this story and then tells the story to Victor. And remember, Victor's telling the story to Robert, who's then relaying the story to his sister, who's presumably giving it to us. So it's this really, I don't know, this interesting narrative structure in this portion. Notice how the creature was stealing from the cottagers until he realized it was causing them pain. And as soon as he realized it was causing them pain, he stopped stealing from them and instead starts helping them, starts bringing them wood for the fire. So there's this idea of compassion, and he understands compassion before he understands language. But but he understands that he can't just walk in there because they will be afraid of him and they will reject him. He, of course, approaches the blind man first, and he only makes this approach after his sort of existential crisis, which happens at the end of chapter 13. What was I? Who am I? What is my creation for? Why have I been created? And that's kind of an existential question that we can all sort of relate to, right? What is my purpose? Who am I? What am I? And the creature, his intellectual and emotional ability, I don't know, does it exceed Victor's? Does it? Maybe. I think that's one of the central questions of the novel is who is more human, Victor or the creature? Just like who is the true monster in the novel, the creature or Victor? So this experience of the creature sort of leads us in that direction of understanding who this creature is and how he learns to function in the world. I want you to pay particular attention in chapter 15 of the books he reads. He comes across these 3 books, Paradise Lost, a volume of Plutarch's Lives, and The Sorrows of Werther. We're going to do an activity next week revolving around those books, so maybe just kind of keep those in mind as you go through what effect these had. Maybe reread that portion in chapter 15 about what effect each of these books has on the creature in his development. All right, so he, of course, enters the house and talks with the blind man first, trying to befriend him. But before he really has a chance to, the family comes in, and of course, everybody runs screaming from the house. The creature, angered at this rejection and maybe angry at himself, sets fire to the house and burns it down. That's violent, that's extreme, but is it understandable? I don't know. This is one of those places that's so hard, and I wish we were in class so we could really just discuss. Is it too much, or is it understandable? I don't know. I think the cases could be made for both of those. Same thing with William. He's just trying to help people, and everybody's terrified of him. But when he meets William, I don't know. Is he trying to help him? This is right after he saved the girl and gets hurt for that, right? He seizes William, and he realizes that William is related to Victor. And at that point, he can't control himself, and he murders him. I guess, or does he? I grasped his throat to silence him, and in a moment he lay dead at my feet. Is he just trying to make him be quiet? Or does he really want to kill him? I don't know. It's difficult to tell. I think it's open to interpretation. And I think that Mary Shelley leaves it this way so that we are asking ourselves, where is that line of humanity and monster? How much of this is really just human nature, and how much of it is monstrous? And is there maybe a part of human nature that is monstrous? But then he frames Justine, which is pretty harsh, and that's pretty monstrous. But then he asks Victor to create a companion. And of course, this is where we leave off in our reading, is this request for a companion so that he will not be alone. And do you think that Victor should do this? Should Victor comply? What do we think of this creature? Is he monstrous? Is he horrible? Or is he really just what any of us would be if we had had that same experience? Do you think Victor will make the creature? Do you think Victor will be moved by this story? Are you moved by this story? It's complicated, and I wish I could just tell you, yeah, this is it. This is what you should think. But again, there are so many ways to interpret this story. There's so many things to consider that we can't just simply say it's this or it's this. And that is what I think is the beauty of Frankenstein. Both of these characters are very isolated and reaching out in their own way Victor is very isolated in his own self-importance, and he tries to reach out, but can he go beyond it? The creature is isolated because society rejects him, and he tries to reach out and gets further rejected. Is he going to be able to move beyond this? What is human nature? What's monster? I don't know. And I would venture to say that Mary Shelley doesn't know, and maybe that's part of the point of the book. All right, so that's what I have to say about these two characters and their experiences in these chapters. So much more to say about this, and I think that's what our discussion board is going to probably revolve around. So yeah, check Canvas for the assignments, and as always, if you have any questions, let me know.